of the things that I always tell my students and hackers and anybody who's in this field is that social engineering is really, really important. If you forget or if you ignore social engineering, you're going to miss out on a big part of what actually takes place in hacking. You know, this is actually a pretty complex piece of software, but it works pretty flawlessly. It works really well and is able to capture passwords. And most people will never detect that they're on, what's basically an evil twin.
Hey everyone, it's David Bombal back with the amazing Occupy the Web. OTW, welcome.
Thank you, David. It's always an honor to be on the best IT and cybersecurity channel on YouTube.
I appreciate you saying that. And just for everyone who hasn't seen our previous videos, which you should have, I've linked a whole bunch below. But if you don't know who OTW is, he's the author of this book, Linux Basics for Hackers. Very, very popular book. I think it's been #1 on Amazon for a long time, right?
It's been Amazon #1 Linux book on Amazon for most of the last 5 years. Although there has been a couple times when it's been #2, but right now it's #1 and will probably stay at #1.
And if you want to see videos where Occupy the Web and I talk about this book, I've linked that below as well, where we do like sort of a video companion guide to the book. He's also the author of this book, Getting Started Becoming a Master Hacker, as well as one of my favorites, Network Basics for Hackers. Occupy the Web, we've got a really exciting one today. We did a whole bunch of Mr. Robot videos, and we haven't done one for a while. A lot of people have been asking for one. And I think the one that you're going to cover today is like a really cool one.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because a couple of things is that I often get lots of emails from people who try to hack Wi-Fi, and they'll say to me, "I've been working on this for days and weeks and months, and I've not been able to crack the password." And sometimes they're just making simple mistakes. But when we're talking about WPA2, which is what most of the Wi-Fi access points are at this point in time, it's basically a password guessing exercise. So what you do is you put together a good password list and you try to you hash each one of those passwords and see if it matches the hash that you've captured from the exchange between the client and the AP. That makes sense. And in some cases, the passwords might be in another language. And so oftentimes I'll have people write me and say, "Yeah, I've been trying this, the RockU password list for days and I haven't gotten anything." And it's like, what language is your native language? And, well, it's Spanish. Well, you need to use a Spanish list, right? So these are kind of simple things that people forget sometimes. And if you're obviously in a country using a Cyrillic alphabet, you need to use a list with a Cyrillic alphabet list. Or if you're using, whatever language it has to match what is the probable language of the password on the system. All right, so keep that in mind. Just using any password list is not going to get you anywhere. I mean, people will often use that RockU list, which, is fine. I actually prefer, and I recommend that people I have a couple of password lists on Hackers Arise that are the top 10,000 and the top 1 million passwords. So these are passwords that we know that people use because they've come out of the data dumps for passwords. So we simply go through all those passwords that appear in those data dumps on the dark web and collect the 1 million most common passwords, which turns out the top 1 million passwords account for about 30% of all the passwords being used. So it's not a surefire by any means that you're going to get it. This gives you about a 1 out of 3 chance, which is pretty good chance to get it if you use one of those passwords. There's still that 2/3 that it's not going to work against. And so one of the things that I always tell my students and hackers and anybody who's in this field is that social engineering is really, really important. If you forget or if you ignore social engineering, you're going to miss out on a big part of what actually takes place in hacking. Oftentimes newbies to hacking will go, "Oh, that's not technical. Yeah. That's not real hacking. If you social engineer." Let me tell you that the Russian hackers use it, the Chinese hackers use social engineering, that criminal gangs use social engineering. You've probably seen lots of emails. He's probably seen lots of emails that are basically social engineering emails. And most of them are poorly designed, and they're not going to work except against, really naive people. For instance, soon after the war between Ukraine and Russia started, I started getting a lot of social engineering attacks from the Russians. None of them were successful. Some of them were pretty good, some of them were not. Those attacks have dwindled. Now, I don't get as many from them, but I got lots of them initially.
I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, and so they none of them worked. But you're trying to hack somebody who doesn't trust anybody, right? I don't trust anything, right? But there's been times in my life when I have gotten emails or text messages that look very, very convincing. I think I've told the story before that I got a few years ago, my cell carrier sends me an email every month saying, "Here, your bill is ready, go ahead and pay it now." And I got one from them. It looked perfect, like it came from my cell carrier, and it was like triple of the normal amount. And I'm like, oh my God, what happened? Why are they charging me 3 times as much? I need to click on this and check my bill. Which is exactly what they wanted me to do. And I almost did it. And then I went, wait a minute, this isn't the day of the month that I get my bill. And that's how close I came to clicking on that one. But there's a lot of other good ones that are out there. But my point simply is that even the best hackers in the world use social engineering. And you can't ignore social engineering. I'm going to go back to Mr. Robot, okay, which is a great show. As you know, it's probably one of my favorite hacker shows. I've watched nearly all of the hacker movies and TV shows, which, by the way, I wanted to put a little plug in for a new Netflix show that's coming out today. At least in the US, it's coming out today. And it's by the same fellow who did Mr. Robot. And it's called, Leave the World Behind, I think is what it's called. Let me check on it. And so it's a story of a massive cyber attack that knocks out all the digital systems at some point in the future. And this is something that I think is a real possibility. I think massive DDoS attacks are something we're going to see in the very near future, especially in a world of IoT devices. So keep in mind, take a look at that show if you get a chance. It's on Netflix if you have Netflix. It's by Sam Esmail, who's the same guy who did Mr. Robot. And Sam makes sure that his hacking is real. Right? That's what we love about his shows. Now, in Mr. Robot, about episode 3, somewhere around there, he's talking about how he hacks everybody's passwords. How easy it is to hack their passwords. Basically, he's going through and creating custom password lists based upon Facebook details, what have you. He's going ahead and doing open source intelligence on them and then using that to create password lists, which we have some tutorials on hackers and realize how to do that. But if you remember, his next door neighbor is Shayla. Shayla eventually becomes his girlfriend, quasi-girlfriend. Okay, his girlfriend who ends up getting killed. Hopefully I didn't do any spoilers for people who haven't seen it, who end up dying. But in any case, he gets her password by social engineering. He says, I got Shayla's password by social engineering her. Well, he lives next door in an apartment next to hers.
You don't actually know me. All you know is that I'm the
Of course I know Shayla. I hacked her email as soon as she moved in next door. With a simple phishing scam, I owned her password pretty easily.
I'm not talking about the stuff you can find online.
And so it's pretty clear, I think, that he got social engineered her through Wi-Fi. So she lives next door so he can reach her Wi-Fi, right? Everybody can see everybody's Wi-Fi access points you can usually see with a normal antenna on with your Wi-Fi adapter about 100 meters. Right? If you put specialized antennas, you can go much farther than that. But he probably used a social engineering attack against her Wi-Fi, and that's what I want to show you how he did that today. So there's an application called Wi-Fi Phishing that is excellent. Now, it's gone through multiple iterations over time, so if you've used it in the past and it didn't work well for you, try it again, because it's gotten pretty good. So what it's built into some of the Kalis, but not all of the Kalis. So I'm using, in this case today, I'm using 2022.3, I believe that's what this is. So we need to go sudo apt. Okay, sudo gives us root privileges, right? Apt is the package manager that's built into Debian. All right, so sudo apt, and then we tell it what we want to do. We want to install, and then it's Wi-Fi Phisher. Let's see if we can find it. Gimlet password. Yeah, okay. It tells me that Wi-Fi Phishing is already the newest version. It also gives me some other messages just that says that there are some applications on my system that have unmet dependencies. You can see it right here. Since we're not using those, that's not really an issue. So if you get that error message, don't worry about it. If you don't have Kali Anonsur, you're not going to get it. But you might have other things on your system that have unmet dependencies. And if you're not using them for, in this case, we won't be, then you don't have to worry about this error message. This error message just really doesn't pertain to us. So we've got Wi-Fi Phishing. Let's go and go sudo, all right? Give us root privileges. If you try to run it without sudo, actually, let's do that just to show you. If you try to run it without sudo, it comes back with an error message that says you got to be root, right? No root user detected. So let's go ahead and use it as root, okay? And then let's just do an H. There's for help. Whenever I'm running any tool, I always like to either go to the help screen. Usually the help screens are -H or they're double dash HELP. Okay, so one of those two, you can get the help screen, and there you're going to find a lot of information about how to use the tool. And that's what we have here. There's a lot of information on how to use this tool. Now, like everything, you can boil this down to a very simple command. Right? There's lots of options here. But what we want to do here, okay, is to go clear my screen. And you can get pretty fancy with Wi-Fi Phishing, but we don't have to. Let's go sudo Wi-Fi Phishing. And then we got to go -O. Before we even do that, we got to go do an IF config. We got to see if we have a wireless adapter. And it looks like we have several wireless adapters. Probably a better way, okay, is to go IW config, which is the wireless. And you can see I've got WLAN 0. Then I've got some others that are configured for Wi-Fi Phishing. It's important to note that to make this attack work, you must have a Wi-Fi adapter that can be put into a monitor mode. Monitor mode is the equivalent of promiscuous mode on a wired network. It means that it will see and pick up all of the traffic. That's what we need to do. All right? We need to pick up all the traffic. Normally, your wired adapter or wireless adapter only will pick up the traffic that's destined for it. What we need to do is to put it into promiscuous mode, which in the wireless world is called monitor mode. And you see right here, it says mode right here. Managed, okay? That's the default mode. We have to get that into monitor mode.
Do you have any favorite Wi-Fi adapters?
Yeah, I can definitely recommend the Alpha. Okay, yeah. This is actually the one I'm using in today's class. It's quite an old one. I think it's been around for quite a while. And also I wanted to point out that one, I'm using VMware, okay, workstation. And so I'm working with a virtual machine. If I'm working with a virtual machine and you're using a Wi-Fi adapter to get your internet access, it is plugged into the virtual machine as wired. So to do this, you have to have another Wi-Fi adapter, one that is capable of going into managed mode, and two, you have to plug it into your virtual machine. So if I go up here and look at removable devices, you can see there it is. There's the Raylink 802.11. Okay, it's an older, but speed is not an issue here. Right? So it doesn't matter. It's not matter if I have an old one, right? Because speed is really irrelevant. Well, I can run this at old speeds because basically what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to put in a man-in-the-middle attack between the Wi-Fi adapter and the client and make them believe that they need to enter their password to update their system, what have you. And that way I can get their password. So we know we've got a Wi-Fi, right? There's WLAN 0. We know that this one's an alpha, it's an older alpha. And so what we need to do next is simply tell it sudo. I'm going to clear my screen again. So we're going to go sudo Wi-Fi Phisher, and then -I, which is the interface, WLAN 0, and then -E is what do I want to call the AP, the access point. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a new access point with the same name as the person I'm trying to social engineer. So let's assume that Shayla, all right, his next door neighbor, has an access point called Shayla. Okay. And, we don't know. It would be easy enough to look, right? Easy enough to just scan the network to see what hers is. And so what we're going to do here is we said, we want to open up a AP called Shayla on WLAN 0. So we're turning our Wi-Fi adapter, our network adapter, into an AP. And we're calling it the ESSID, or more commonly, the SSID is going to be called Shayla. Let's go ahead and hit enter. And there it goes. Here's my available phishing option, a firmware upgrade page. So what this will do is that when she goes to connect to her AP, the Shayla AP, it's going to give her a screen that says, you need to update your firmware. We need your password. And then there's another one down below for the network manager connect. There's some others as well. But right now, let's just stay with the firmware upgrade page. Let's go ahead and hit enter. It's starting a fake access point, and you can see that it's on channel 6. Shayla is the ESSID. It's on WLAN 0. All right. So what Shayla is going to see, let me show you what she's seeing. So this is what Shayla is seeing. All right. This is what pops up on her screen. And when she tries to connect, it pops up, a new version of the firmware has been detected in awaiting installation. Please review the following terms and conditions and proceed. You need to click. She's going to click, I agree with the above terms and conditions. That looks really legitimate, right? Then put in her pre-shared key. That's what's appearing when she tries to connect to her AP. All right. We got a couple of connected bits. I'm going to go over and now attempt to connect to Shayla, okay, from another machine. Okay. You can start to see that there's some traffic appearing, the HTTP requests. Okay. Now, Shayla is going to try to connect to her network, and she's going to get the message I just showed you. I'm getting it over here on another machine, and I'm going to agree to the terms and conditions, and I'm going to now watch my screen, what's going to happen here. And then when she goes ahead and starts her upgrade, watch what happens. There it is. See the password? Popped up right there. We know her password now. So, this is actually a pretty complex piece of software, but it works pretty flawlessly. It works really well and is able to capture passwords. And most people will never detect that they're on what's basically an evil twin. Okay, this is what we're doing is we're putting up an evil twin that looks just like her AP and then asks her for an update or upgrade on it. So this is a pretty easy way. I think that the screens are pretty legitimate looking, as I showed you. There's also ways that you can use this same software for being able to install a payload on their system. It's a pretty complex, pretty advanced piece of software that does a really, really good job. So on Shayla, from Shayla's perspective, it's going through a firmware update in progress screen. Let me show you what that looks like. Okay. And it takes a couple of minutes to go through this whole update in progress while we've got her password now. And let me show you what it looks like. I got to capture it from the other computer. So here's what's going on Shayla's screen over here. She's getting this and it's updating while we're capturing her password. It goes through like a couple of minutes doing this, so it looks legitimate, as it's trying to update her firmware. So this is the way that Elliot was able to get the passwords at least from Shayla. And I think it's one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about it is that, once again, I want to emphasize that social engineering is a real part of hacking, right? It's a key element for most hackers that need to have in their toolbox, and you need to do it well because you might only get one chance. If people suspect, for instance, if Shayla suspects that this is not legitimate, she's not going to go back there. You only get one shot. It's got to look good. It has to be legitimate looking. And if you do it right, you can get a lot of information this way. This will, of course, only work if you're within, say, about 100 meters of the AP. And the other thing that you want to keep in mind is that you want to be relatively close to the target, physically close, or turn up the wattage on your AP, which is actually illegal, right? Most countries have a limit on what your AP can project. In the United States, it's a half a watt, but it's possible to get inside the firmware and change that limitation on the wattage. And sometimes on the alphas, you can turn up the wattage 4 or 5 times. I'm not going to show you that here because that's illegal. That is illegal, and YouTube would take it down immediately. So that's it. That's our social engineering of Shayla. We can see it came across the screen. It was on there for a moment. We captured her password. Now we can, log into her AP, but probably more importantly, it's likely that she's using that same password someplace else. And that's what Elliot does. And although people won't always use exactly the same password, they'll often use a variation. So once you've captured this password, there are some tools like Cup and Crunch, both of which we have tutorials on Hackers Arise, that you can take that password, that basic password, and add numbers and letters before and after it. You can munge it by changing some of the letters into numbers and special characters, like @, $, W, 0, R, D. That's called munging. That's what everybody's taught to do to make your password more difficult to crack. So there are a lot of tools that can munge passwords, including something as simple, well, not so simple. Burp Suite can do it. You can do it with Burp Suite. You can do a number of other password cracking tools, and you can make your own password lists that are munged by using things like Crunch and Cup, what have you.
So, OccupyTheWeb, I just want to ask some questions that I think a lot of people may be thinking about themselves. At the top there, it says Deauth. So I'm assuming what's happening is your adapter is deauthing the real access point, or clients on the real access point, so that the clients connect to this fake one, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So within WPA2, we have what's called a Deauth command. I've written some tutorials on Hackers Arise. It can be a really good tool for doing a DOS attack against an AP because it sends out a Deauth packet that is then kicks everybody off the AP. And if you keep on sending it, people can never connect. And that's what's happening up here, is that it's deauthing the clients. So they have to connect, and they're going to connect to the other, in this case, Shayla, the other AP with the same name. So they can't connect to the original, but they can connect to the fake one that we just created.
Yeah, so I mean, deauth it from the real access point, and the client automatically connects to the fake one, and that's how you get her to put her credentials into that fake web page. What about WPA3?
WPA3 is a whole nother exercise, and my guess is, I haven't tried this tool on WPA3, but this is a man-in-the-middle attack. It's not cracking passwords. It's basically creating an evil twin. So I haven't tried it against WPA3, but I think it'll work. But I don't know that the DOS will work on WPA3.
That's the problem I found, Deauth doesn't work. But you could, I mean, that's where the power comes in, right? Because if you set yours higher power or you're closer, then the client may just connect to your access point rather than the other one.
Exactly. So your system will try to connect to the strongest AP. And it's in the case of Elliot, he's right next door. And what he could do if he knew the layout of her apartment is to put his AP right next to the wall where she's trying to connect. That way he doesn't have to change the firmware. As long as his AP is stronger, appears stronger. And if it's closer, it's going to appear stronger. Also, as I mentioned, it's possible to actually manipulate the firmware inside of these network adapters to have them use more power, to project more power than is legally possible, but we can't do that on YouTube.
It's also like I'm not recommending, once again, because of legal rules, that anyone does this, but I've seen with a lot of more advanced access points, you can change the country, right? So that's one way to change the power, because some countries allow much higher power than others. So like in the US, you have a lot more, you're allowed higher power than you're allowed in the UK, as an example.
Right. And that's exactly right. Is the US is only limited to half a watt. Other countries don't have limitations.
Yeah.
Some nations have larger and the higher limitations. The other thing is that in the US, we only use channels 1 through 11, and most countries use channels 1 through 14. So sometimes it's important to know that, because sometimes what you can do if you're a hacker is use those channels on the 12, 13, 14 for nefarious purposes, and it won't be seen by people who are scanning, looking for, oftentimes the network security engineers looking for illegal or malicious
rogue access points.
Rogue access points or connections. And by using those other channels in a country like the US, it's not going to appear to them. They're not going to see it. So there's these national rules sometimes can be used to your advantage.
I just think it's so easy. I mean, if again, we don't advocate this, and you have to be really careful with the legal frameworks. But if you set yours to like Russia or some other country where they allow much higher power, then your access point is going to be higher. And this is where the whole discussion comes in about like using software that looks for rogue access points and shuts them down, because this kind of stuff, like you've shown here, is so easy to do.
Yes. Yeah. Rogue access points, if you're a network engineer, rogue access points are something you have to be cognizant of and be scanning for, because it can compromise your entire network.
I mean, you've shown how easy it is, because the thing is and this is the problem with like WPA2, right, as well. If you don't have to use a password list, you could use a brute force attack using Hashcat, but then it's also limited in the number of characters it can do. So, if you use a really good password, then this is such an easy way around that problem. If you want to capture the password. Sorry, go on.
It's a much easier way than trying to crack WPA, unless somebody's using a simple password, which a lot of people do. Like I said, there's about a third of people using simple passwords, and you can crack them pretty easily. But somebody who's very security conscious and has used a very complex password, this is an easy way to capture their password. And most people, not everybody, most people will fall for this. And so it's something that should be part of the hacker's toolkit, is to social engineer. If this one doesn't work, there's other social engineering attacks that you can try.
I mean, it's just thinking about it, like you said, this is good visibility for people who are not aware of it, because like your phone or your other devices are just automatically going to connect to the one with the highest power.
Right.
And then you're going to have that thing pop up. So it's not as if someone has to be tricked to connect to the access point. The device is doing it by itself.
Right. The device is going to access by itself to the strongest access point. So yes. So if you're close by or you're giving off a much stronger signal, then you're going to get. Or one of the things that you can do also is use a directional antenna. So use a directional antenna and shoot the signal directly at the user. So it's going to appear stronger to them. So like, for instance, a parabolic antenna. This one that I'm using right here has a high gain antenna on it. But when I connect it to a parabolic antenna, it's amazing. It's amazing. I've got a good dish antenna outside, and it's amazing what it can pick up. It costs me about $150, $170, but it can pick up Wi-Fi access points for great distances.
I need to talk about your SDR stuff, because I want to plug that as well, because you do the software-defined radio training, and I mean Wi-Fi is just one frequency band, right? There's a whole bunch of other bands and interesting things you can do.
Yes, well, I mean, there's Wi-Fi is wireless, right? So it's one of those radio signals that are out there, but there are so many radio signals out there, and the ones that you are maybe most interesting are the cell system, right? So in a recent class, we built our own cell system. We built our own cellular system, which is possible. You can do this. We can intercept satellite communications. These are all radio signals. So with the right software and the right hardware, and it does get a little bit expensive. You can go in with a $30 RTL SDR, which is about $30, and that's a receiver, and that works pretty good at a lot of things, but it can't send a signal. And so to get a good transceiver, something that can both send and receive, you're starting to look at $300 to $350. In our recent cell class, we were using a line SDR, which is it's about $500, $550. And then ideally you'd want a good antenna. And so the antennas, like I said, I've got a parabolic that I use that's about I paid $170 off Amazon. And then for satellite hacking, I have another antenna for satellites and GPS hacking. GPS is one of those other things that is a radio signal, right? That you can go ahead and intercept and spoof your GPS. These are all radio signals that people really haven't thought much about in terms of security until Flipper Zero came out.
I was going to ask you, that was my next question. Is the Flipper Zero a toy, or is it a great tool? What's your opinion?
It's a limited, I think it's great in increasing awareness of radio hacking. But to really get into this subject and do it in depth, you've got a much greater processor, stronger processor, and powerful processor on your desktop or laptop. Okay, you can put a better SDR on it, and you have a whole host of software that you can install and run with a good RAM and a good processor that is not possible on a little tiny Flipper Zero. Now, Flipper Zero, it's good for some things, and I'm not gonna talk it down. But I am going to say that it's limited in what you can do. Okay, it's limited in range, it's limited in software, and it's limited in power. It's limited in the frequency range as well. So some of these other SDRs can cover a frequency range of 1 kilohertz all the way up to 6 gigahertz. That's a huge range. And we start talking about things like GPS and cell, those are often operating in the 1, 2, 3 gigahertz range, which is outside of the range of a Flipper Zero. A lot of the home appliances that the Flipper Zero works really well against is they are operating in the less than 1 gigahertz range. So that's where it works. It goes up to 900 megahertz, just short of a gigahertz. But these others can do up to 6 gigahertz, which covers a much broader range of the spectrum and allows you to do hacking like cell systems, like satellite systems that are up in this higher frequency range. In the case of 5G cell, we're looking at 5G cell operating up in the 5 gigahertz range. Some of them are. Some of them are operating as low as 2 gigahertz to 5 gigahertz. So the Flipper Zero it's not gonna cut it in that field, right? But it's a good place to start in radio hacking. Radio hacking is an underappreciated field of penetration testing, cybersecurity, whatever you want to call it, that has been ignored for years. And as a result, like SCADA hacking, which is something that we do. We have a class coming up in January in SCADA hacking. For years, people just ignored SCADA as a cybersecurity vulnerability and a threat. Now the awareness is growing, but because it was ignored for so long, people didn't secure it. And many of these massive systems that run refineries and electricity grids were largely unprotected. Some of them still are. And that's what Sam Esmail's new film is about. It's about those systems being attacked. And I think that that's a very real possibility. And that's why I'm excited. I haven't seen the movie yet, but I'm excited because I know, one, Sam Esmail makes good movies. Two, he makes sure that his hacking is all realistic. So I'm looking forward. That's what on my agenda for tonight. I think it premieres tonight on Netflix. So that's what I'll be doing tonight.
OccupyTheWeb, I really want to thank you for sharing your knowledge and your experience. And, keeping it simple for people who are starting, but also showing us, sort of where things are going and, what's possible. We're going to have to get you back with Dragon OS and some other products where you show us more of the spectrum and stuff that you can do. But I really want to thank you for sharing.
You're very welcome. I'd love to be back and do some SDR hacking for your viewers, because this is an area that I'm very enthusiastic about. You can tell by my voice I'm enthusiastic about it. I love it. I think it's underappreciated. And I think that we're one of the few places that actually teach it. So we can do a class, a video on Dragon OS, introducing the viewers to Dragon OS, which is an operating system designed specifically for radio hacking. And then we'll look at maybe some of the other adapters and some of the strengths and weaknesses of adapters and some of the attack vectors that we can use in this field.
That's great. I look forward to it. For everyone who's watching, put comments below, stuff that you want to see. OccupyTheWeb, I will say, I will end off with this. A lot of comments. Whenever we delay posting a video for any length of time, I get comments. Where are you? Where are you? When are you coming back? So thanks for coming back so often and sharing your knowledge.
I'll always keep coming back, folks. So it might be a little gaps in there, but you can rest assured I'll be back.